Welcome to The Author Show, where we present new authors and books. From fiction to self-help and everything in between, you'll find it all here. To watch the TV version of our program, visit authorswebtv.com. That's authorswebtv.com. And now, let the show begin.
Hello and welcome back to the show. This is your host, Don McCauley. Today we're welcoming to the program author Timothy Alleman, and he's the co-author of the Principled Legal Standard for the First Genuine Doctrinal Reformation of the Church. Tim, how are you?
Fine. Thank you very much for having me on.
Let's start with the big question. Tell us about this book, please.
The Principled Legal Standard for the First Doctrinal Reformation of the Church, the title itself, we contend that there hasn't been a doctrinal reformation of the Church since the Dark Ages began.
So who did you write your book for specifically?
From anybody, from the teenager, from adult who is a Christian, and they have questions concerning their faith.
Now, would you say there's any type of central message or perhaps underlying theme that you could say runs throughout your book?
Yes, it is the lawful depiction of God using the basic, most fundamental principles of law and jurisprudence.
So what's the most important idea you're sharing in your book that's really going to add value to the reader's life?
That once our book is read and they understand it, the Christian will understand all things from salvation, God, man, sin, redemption, Satan, everything that one need know for the Christian life.
Now, if you could compare your book with any book out there we might already be familiar with, which book would it be and why?
Systematic Theology, written by Louis Sperry Schaeffer. In that book, he addresses theology systematically, looking at everything in each category: man, sin, redemption, the Mosaic Law, the Old Testament, New Testament. So I would compare it to a book like that.
How did you come up with the idea for the book?
I was questioning my own beliefs. I was examining the legal line of reasoning having to do with man's sin, God has wrath for sin, man's found guilty of sin, and the idea of the pardon. It did not make sense for a pardon for somebody else to be punished in your place. That is not the definition of a pardon as found in the dictionary.
Now, you claim your system of Christian theology is different than all others. How is that?
It applies the most basic fundamentals of law to God's system of jurisprudence. And this is why traditional Christian theology, since the Dark Ages began, actually does not apply the basic fundamentals of law as found in the Mosaic standard of jurisprudence. In the Mosaic standard of jurisprudence, if a man be ignorant and it was unintentional, that's not held against him. But in a lot of traditional Christian doctrines, they portray God as holding things against man which ought not be held against him.
Now, you claim there are legal distinctions in words in the original languages of the Bible that have been and are being covered up by mistranslation. Can you give us some examples of that?
Yes. Kakos and poneros are two different Greek words. They have different definitions, yet they are both translated as evil generically. Kakos means unintentional evil, whether it be evil that is done because a man is ignorant, and poneros is intentional evil. Yet they will translate both words generically as just evil. And they do that with many other words. In the English Bible, you will see the word sin in many cases, but there are different Greek words for sin. Hamartia means to fall short of the target aimed for. Hamartano actually is harms against others, crimes committed or offenses and harms that affect others. Yet they will translate both as sin, and the English reader who doesn't know anything about Greek, they are not able to tell the difference because all they see is sin. So unless it's a very stark context where you say that somebody sinned against another person, then you can tell that it is a wrongdoing that harms somebody else. But they cover up those words on purpose. Ephason and aphaimi are two completely different words, yet they will translate both of them generically as forgive. Ephason actually doesn't mean forgiveness. It actually means to be liberated from a forced obligation. And in the context of sin or the corrupt nature, ephason means to be liberated from sin. Yet they will translate it as forgiveness. And so that's why they translate the Bible as believe on the Lord Jesus Christ for the forgiveness of sins, when it's actually for the liberation from the obligation to sin. And those distinctions, they do not bring out in the English. And it seems the Bible is the only book in human history where there's many different versions, and yet they refuse to translate it correctly to where you shouldn't have to know anything about Greek to read the Bible in English and understand what it actually means.
When you say they refuse, who are you talking about?
Everybody who has translated all of these Bibles, whether it be the King James Version, the NASB, New American Standard, all of those things. I'm saying every translation of the Bible since the King James is translated incorrectly.
Why do you think that is?
I believe it is to cover up the legal distinctions between words and the legal distinctions as to offenses and states. If the message is that Jesus Christ died in every man's place and every man deserved that death, then when people say, what about the infant who lived 2 months and died? What has he done? Or the man in a state of ignorance? Or a man who is enslaved to the corrupt nature and doesn't want to be? You see, that is no case for having wrath against the man. And so everybody must be portrayed as having to ask forgiveness or seek forgiveness as though they had committed a crime for which punishment is called for. And that is simply not the case, as all people are individuals.
So what is the conservative theological law?
Conservative theological law is the most basic fundamentals of law, even that you'll see as the ideal in human courts. A typical example of conservative law is, suppose a toddler picks up a gun, he doesn't understand what it is, it goes off and kills somebody. In human courts, nobody takes the toddler into court and charges him with a crime, and they recognize that he did not understand, he was acting in ignorance, he did not understand what was going on, he doesn't know anything about firearms. And so human courts recognize these differences in legal distinctions as opposed to somebody who willfully does something evil and willfully harms others. In the Mosaic Law, these distinctions are spelled out in detail. And with traditional Christian doctrine since the Dark Ages, God is depicted as though he cannot see the difference. They will portray God as though he were like a Pharisee. He expects unsaved man to be righteous, and man is not righteous, and so therefore God has wrath on man for not being righteous, when they will plainly say it's impossible for unsaved man to be righteous, and so therefore they portray God as being unrealistic, or as though he were not able to realize that man cannot be righteous.
So my question in all of this is, why do they do that?
I believe, a lot of people they react when one talks about conspiracies or conspiratorial, but when you're talking about God and Satan, conspiracy is a given that Satan does conspire, and the whole point of a deception is to get people to believe that which is false as though it was true. And Satan is behind all false depictions of God. And there are a lot of people who believe things which are not true concerning God, and they are unaware of it, and they don't mean evil, but that is what occurs in a deception, to where a person is deceived into thinking something about God is true, when in reality it is not. So since all false doctrines about God are actually accusations against him, and so the Christian unwittingly actually winds up making the satanic argument against God, and they're completely unaware of it.
So what is original sin in your opinion?
This is where we get back into Greek words, and we get back into the mistranslations. Adam actually trespassed. He trespassed. That is the Greek word. The Greek word means trespass. Adam was to be uninvolved in the conflict between God and Satan because there was a legal case ongoing between God and Satan, and humanity was supposed to be a passive participant and be uninvolved. The original trespass is what it is. Adam ate of the tree, gained the knowledge of good and evil, and therefore he had testimony to offer, and therefore he was subject to legal inquiry or judgment, and correspondingly he suffered mortality and was subject to death, for death is used to test people. That's what death is used for. And so Adam became involved in a case between God and Satan, and he was forced to make a decision for either side. And when one says, I love the truth, the very next question that occurs is, how much does one love the truth? Is there a conflict of interest? And so death is used to verify motive and to either reveal a conflict of interest or to prove that there actually isn't a conflict of interest in a person's testimony. And so original sin is not biologically corrupt DNA. Original sin is not God holding over your head Adam's trespass in terms of wrath or anything like that. Adam got involved in the court case between God and Satan, and so therefore he had testimony to offer, and so therefore he was subject to legal examination. And that is what it is. We are actually all trespassers, and though it's through no fault of our own, it's because of the actions of Adam and Eve that we are all involved in the court case, and so therefore we have testimony to offer.
In your opinion, who should buy your book?
The Christian, the young Christian, from teenager even to the mature person who has questions about the depiction of the cross, of the mission of Christ, of why people look at the cross and there's still a bit of a mystery and they scratch their head. And it certainly is not the epitome of conservative law for someone to say that you can go out and do whatever you want, though we don't recommend it. You will never suffer any wrath. And so that's the exact opposite of conservative law, where you have the complete removal of deterrency. And for those who have questions concerning penal substitute theology and want real legal answers, this is the book for them.
Well, time is getting very short, so the most important question, where can readers find you and your book?
Our book is available on Amazon.com. It's also available on Kindle. The first 10 chapters, you can read the first 10 chapters. There's 60 chapters in this book. And the challenge is to read the first 10 chapters, which are for the basic orientation to law, and to see if you can destroy the arguments that are made in the first 10 chapters of this book. If you cannot, then this is the book for you.
Could you spell your name for us, please?
Timothy Allen Alleman. That's Timothy Alleman.
This has been just great. Our guest today has been Timothy Allen Alleman, and he is the author of the Principled Legal Standard for the First Genuine Doctrinal Reformation of the Church. Timothy, thanks very much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me on.
This is Don McCauley wrapping up another edition of The Author Show. Listen to some of your favorite authors every day, 24/7, by visiting theauthorshow.com. Just click on the book title in the player at the top of the page. These interviews are available to book buyers worldwide on demand. If you'd like to be a guest on the show and feel you could benefit by getting in front of your target audience with a high-quality media interview that will make a real impact, visit www.theauthorshow.com, fill out the form, and we may be contacting you shortly. Join us here next time for another great book and another exciting author on The Author Show.
Thanks for listening to The Author Show. To contact us, call toll-free 1-877-955-8800. That's 877-55-8800. Or visit theauthorshow.com. Theauthorshow.com. Tune in next time to another great author on The Author Show.